Hello and welcome to this UniTaster On Demand event today. My name is John Cheek. I'm here from UniTasterDays, and with these events, we explore studying different subjects at university. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Dr. Christina Welch, joining us from the University of Winchester. With these events, we look at why you might be interested in studying a particular course, what to expect on it, application tips and careers. And the subject I'm delighted to say we're looking at today is religion. So with that, I'm very conscious you've tuned in to hear from our guests and not from myself. So Christina, if I'll come to you first, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your role now, career today, and what's brought you to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a religious studies lecturer. So I sort of teach students about a variety of religions. And what's brought me to this is I initially went to university. I wanted to train to be a teacher, so a religious studies teacher. And then I wanted to stay at that for a few years and then move on to do educational psychology with children. So literally become an educational psychologist. But I got a bit waylaid. I had to choose between psychology and religion, and eventually chose religion. And I've just ended up complete career change, but I absolutely love what I do. I haven't got any regrets at all.
Thank you. Really pleased to hear that. So first question I'm going to ask you, Tina, is to look at almost why a student might want to consider studying religion. So in those terms, if you've got a student that's looking at university now, potentially looking at subjects, why might they wish to consider religion?
I always describe the study of religion as a bit like people watching in the past and today, because what you're doing is you're looking at all these different types of religious behavior, the myths that people believe, the rituals that people do, what they wear, how they engage with environmentalism, how they engage with politics, all these different things, real full-on intersectionality, just all those different topics. And you're just looking at how people that have got either a religious or spiritual belief or claim that, some of them aren't even formal religions. It can be things like Jediism, Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. There's all these sorts of different religions out there. It's not always the big four or big five. And looking at how they do the stuff of religion, we look at doctrine as well. What does the book, if there is one, say? And what do people actually do? So it's a bit like people watching. So you get all of the usual study skills, time management, critical writing, oral, as in speaking and listening communication, critical writing skills, time management, all of that sort of stuff. But on top of that, you're getting religious and cultural literacy. And, you only need to look at what's happening in the world today globally to see that religion is vitally important, and understanding where people who profess a faith or have got adherence to a religion are coming from. You really need to be able to understand that, because you can't just go, oh, it's Islam or Judaism or Buddhism. You have to know that those are sort of like umbrella terms, and there are multiple ways of being Islamic, Jewish, Buddhist, Christian, whatever religion it is. So you get that real context and nuance, and that's really embedded into all that we do.
And in terms of kind of the next question, it might touch on a little bit of what you've covered there, but if a student goes on and studies religion at university, what can they expect? And I'd imagine it's a tricky one to answer, because it might well be quite broad. But what can they expect to learn?
So there are in Britain today, there really aren't any sole religious studies courses. It's almost impossible to find somewhere where you just study religion. So it's usually with something. So at Winchester, it's with philosophy, theology, and ethics. But you might go somewhere and it will be just with philosophy, or it will just be with theology, or it might be with history or English. Very often, if it's with something like history or English, they're really sort of gearing students up if they want to go into teaching as a career, but also philosophy, because, that's what's taught at A level as well now, philosophy and religion. So it really just depends. And then what you've got to do is you've got to actually look at the specialisms of your lecturers, and you need to look at the actual sort of titles of the modules. So some courses might be a course on Islam or Hinduism or something, and it's very obvious what they're teaching. And other courses might be a little bit amorphous, like religions in Britain, or, American religions, or new religions, or, living religions. And so it could be that you're studying 2 or 3 religions, looking it through the lens of ritual or myth or religious practice, a whole host of things. So the best thing to do is actually really look at the website And if you're unsure, obviously go to open days. Open days are always important. You should always go to a university where you feel comfortable. But if you're not sure, just contact somebody. As academics, we love engaging with not only just our current students, but with potential applicants. So if you just contact somebody will get back to you. Just they'll be more than happy. And if it's a local university and you're able to come in, more often than not, we'll say, if you want to come and sit in on a lecture, you're more than welcome to do that. But you do need to do a little bit of digging around. It's not always something where you can go, I'm going to cover every religion on this course. Sometimes you might find that they have a specialism in the Abrahamic religions or the Asian originating religions, or they might be more interested in, you might find more courses in new religions. It really just depends.
Such fantastic advice, and I'm a big Open Days fan, naturally, as someone that runs the university website. But also, I'm so glad you mentioned about modules, because so many students that I've chatted to, over the years, they kind of see a course at one university and a course at another and expect them to be very similar, even though because they've got a similar name, but so many times they're completely different. So yeah, cannot stress that enough. Do check out the modules, because it's so important, because that's what you're going to be spending your time doing. Right, touching on linking to the answer there a little bit, but say you had a student that is interested in studying religion, but also potentially is interested in studying theology and other related subjects, which you touched on in the last answer. Do you mind just giving us a little bit of information in terms of how different they are and the difference between the program?
Yeah, sure. On the whole, philosophy will be Western philosophy. So it will tend to be sort of, continental philosophy, or, something that's the normal canon that you would pick up. So it's unlikely that you would study Islamic philosophy or Hindu philosophy. It's very much that Western canon, which, on the whole is largely male centric, let's be honest. So you, even though there are philosophies in all the different religions, if you're doing a philosophy course, it is very unlikely you would study religions separately. You might do some Christian philosophy, because there's a huge overlap, obviously, Aristotle, all that sort of stuff. In terms of theology is different from religious studies. Theology is usually Christian theology, although you can get Islamic theology taught as well. Usually the people that teach theology are actually of that belief system. So if you're studying Christian theology, it is very likely that the person who is teaching you is going to be a Christian. If you're studying religious studies, it could very well be that your lecturer has a religious belief, or it could be that they can be a total skeptic of religion and actually think that religions are just important in terms of studying a culture, as opposed to going, I actually have a belief system myself. So that's the main difference. If you're looking at theology, on the whole, the people will be of that belief system. Religious studies, we're all very diverse, and some of us don't really believe in very much at all.
That's so interesting. So I take myself back now to school, where you do RE, and naturally I think it's just the in your mind you just associate that the teachers of RE will be particularly religious, but it does make you think that it makes complete sense that you answer in that way. So yeah, thank you. Really interesting. Right. So kind of moving on now to the next step, and that's looking at applications. And so say a student is very interested in studying religion and have really enjoyed hearing about what to expect and why they might consider it. In terms of applications, is there anything that you perhaps like to see in a student, or if you're involved in the application process, like to see in an application that you can help us with there?
It's going to be the same with every subject, to be quite honest. And then that's an interest or a passion for the subject. As what we want is students turning up that are interested and want to learn. And it can be that they're really interested in, say, Buddhism, and then they don't think they're particularly interested in something else. And that's absolutely fine. But just an interest in learning to study about religions and all that entails, and, the doings of religions as well as just the books. And some students can be inspired from watching a YouTube clip, or they've watched a film or read a book, or they've been to a talk. There's all sorts of different reasons, but knowing that students want to learn the subject, they've got an interest in the subject, is really important for all of us. And it can be that it's the history of a religion, really interested in, I don't know, something to do with Nepal hundreds of years ago, and how does that affect what's going on today? It doesn't always have to be about the now. but just having an interest in the area, because, you know, if you're going to be studying something for 3 years, you really don't want to be doing something that you find a bit boring. So just being open, honest, you don't need to claim lots of things. You don't need to claim you've read loads of books and have read all the text, you know, the Quran backwards, all of that sort of stuff. That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in the fact that you want to learn, you're willing to learn, you have that developing passion. And that's how I switched from thinking I was going to go off and be a secondary school RE teacher to deciding I wanted to be a university lecturer, because I just love the subject. I just live and breathe it.
And I suppose there's still links there, isn't there? You're still kind of helping people, you're still teaching people, just to perhaps a different age group between the two. Right then, so my final question relates to careers, and you kindly touched on your own experience in terms of careers. But if a student goes to university to study religion, what careers can they go on potentially to explore, look to in the future?
To be quite honest, it's really wide. A lot of students will go on and take additional qualifications and then go on and study law, or obviously teacher training, that sort of thing. But a lot of students go into anything that's related to people. So you could go into social work. We've had students go on to social work, nursing, all sorts of things, funeral directing, anything that involves people. HR is a big one, hotel work, managing hotels. When you're looking at the differences between people, and the differences between people of different religious faiths, actually that fits anywhere. Knowing that Friday's a special day for Muslims and Friday evening's a special day for Jews, and that you don't serve pork sausages at a meal when you've got people of a Jewish or Islamic persuasion. All of that sort of stuff's really important, because if you're managing a group of people, you need to make sure, because of our Equalities Act, that you don't deliberately discriminate. So there's all sorts of things that people can go into. Genuinely, I mean, we've had people go into games designing because they've got all this knowledge about myth and ritual, and that feeds into, designing games that people want to play. So I would say it's a really, really open field. Clearly, if you want to be a medical doctor, that's a big change because it takes quite a lot of extra training. But I would say on the whole, nothing is ruled out. Everything's ruled in. If it's got people involved in it, a religious studies degree will give you that little bit of extra, because it gives you the religious literacy that a lot of people don't have.
Thank you. And that's so fascinating. I was just listening to your answer then. I look at, games design is such a good example, because games have massive historical significance. So actually having that knowledge, and my best friend at university, this isn't a religion link, but it is one about funeral directors, studied music and ended up being a funeral director. So obviously funeral directors have got a very diverse range of skills.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And it's transferable skill. You can see that it opens up many paths, and obviously that's been the case in terms of your career as well. Dr. Christina Welch joined us from the University of Winchester. Thank you so much. What an interesting conversation. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.